Hello everyone, and welcome back for week 7 of the overview for English 1510. We're in a couple of different states in terms of student to student. Right now I have some students where all feedback is back, and others who are waiting on a few items. It has a variety of different reasons behind this. Some students with late submissions, most of them not with really a rationale behind that, so it's not much I can do in terms of credit on there. But for students that I've been working with for the extenuating circumstances and things that have kind of come up out of nowhere, I'm trying to keep everybody on the same page. So I'm hoping that by the end of Tuesday I will have the other 50% of those posted up, and then by the end of Wednesday evening or Thursday morning, everyone should be squared away with all of their feedback that was submitted, at least the on-time submission things. For memoirs, just remember that everybody's credit being posted on the rough drafts. Mostly everybody had their rough drafts in, so those are credit based, and then I'm writing the commentary on the final draft one. And then I am opening a Dropbox till the end of the class on the 13th that any student who wants to do a rewrite on the memoir to earn credit back. Just remember, you have to respond to any feedback that was on the summary outline and the final draft. Just make sure that you note that those are there. Also remember, students, I have recommended ASC tutoring for a number of students during drafting stage, and I have a number of students with a lot of problems in the drafting stage. Not following directions on summary outline is one thing, but then also looking through and seeing quite a few of these where in the drafting, the sentence level issues and things that were diagnosed in the diagnostic writing and referred to there have not been addressed and still are not being worked out in the drafting stage. So those problems there, remember, I give extra credit with the ASC tutoring as long as they get confirmation forms forwarded to me. So make sure that you're utilizing that during the drafting stages to get that little bump there. It helps you with your drafting stage. If you do have sentence level, punctuation, grammar, mechanics items, I'm not marking a great deal of that. I'm looking mostly at content, which is why we work those things out in the summary outline formats. For rhetorical analysis, the feedback is just slightly different on these ones. The week 7 instructional overview, I'm launching this at noon on Tuesday. Make sure everybody took the 4th off. I got most feedback prior to this back to just over half of students in both 1510 classes. Rest be today and tomorrow morning for everything else that's there. As I said, with the remainder of you going into Thursday morning, maybe. I'm hoping to have those worked out tomorrow. For anyone who received later feedback in rhetorical analysis summary outline, just remember on this, if you did have your summary outline prior to drafting, then I will be making the comments on your rough draft before you do a final draft there. If you did have that feedback, I will still be detracting points for some of those things. But even for those of you who got it up closer to the mark, just remember, if you didn't have feedback on rhetorical analysis, summary outline, I won't be taking further points away on the draft commentary that I'm putting there. I will just be making note of it so you know in both areas, or I'll be referring you back to the summary outline in case, for anyone whose was posted when you were writing that draft on Saturday or Sunday. If that's the case, then you certainly will not have further detractions on the rough draft. Then in the final drafting stage on those coming up, then I will be marking things down in full on those. Just note, the only one that can be rewritten is that memoir summary, the memoir final draft. So make sure you're watching for those. Anybody who does want to redo those for a little bit additional credit on those. The main thing here is I still have a number of students, no matter what stage we're at in which paper, not following directions and certainly not doing readings. I had the number one issue I had in a lot of these papers on rhetorical analysis was, despite going in that overview and referring to, remember, logos, ethos, and pathos are rhetorical concepts. Those are not devices. Rhetorical devices are things like imagery, music, celebrity spokesperson, voiceover narration, satire, sometimes comedy or just humor, things along those lines. Those are rhetorical devices that are used in ads. Rhetorical concepts of logos and ethos and pathos, that's what's used to talk about the way in which a device appeals to an intended audience. When you say that logos is the rhetorical concept, what's at play there is, if I use imagery, and the imagery that I show my viewer is all logical billboards that present logical, fact-based information, that's a logos appeal to my intended audience. It makes them think logically and rationally about that information and tries to persuade them to think in the way that I want them to think as the ad producers. And a number of students aren't following through on those and are understanding that. Instead, you're talking about logos, ethos, pathos as though those are the devices. They're not. They are concepts. So remember, the logical device, the rhetorical devices are things like imagery, music, celebrity presenters, voiceover narration, sometimes captions on the screen. They're the things that are used as tools in the ad, in the piece that you're analyzing. Okay, there's a difference between those and the rhetorical concepts, which is why I made that distinction early on with this. Those changes and updates and corrections can still be made, certainly. And for those of you, again, who didn't have feedback on that prior to or early enough in your drafting stage, I'm certainly not marking down more for that. I'm just making note of it. But it is quite a bit off, even from all instructions. And then I still had, through all of this, I got about a third of students not doing them correctly, like not completing the summary outlines, and when they are, it's not following directions that are just in the basic overviews or in the Dropbox pieces themselves when they go through the instructions there. You know, the rhetorical analysis also included a full student paper that was from this, that had a breakdown and had a very good depiction, analysis of rhetorical devices for you to follow. And that was, you know, it was clearly ignored in those parts of the instructions by about a third of students, because the submissions that I got from about a little bit less than a third were just way off. And then students submitting things late, you got to remember that policy holds. I can't keep to a grading schedule on this one. They're coming in all over the place, and certainly don't try sending them email. They're only accepted through the Dropboxes. So having said all that, this week we're on to week 7. And in the 7th week, like last week, in the 6th, we had videos that were added in for part of the research portion, starting to get to know the library databases so that you can work into argumentation piece this week. So this week, you have 2 new ones in there. You got research and MLS citation for the videos. There's web search versus research, and then the other one that's listed there. They're both in the content folder. For the reading this week, if you're working in the 3rd edition, is chapter 24, and if it's in the 4th edition, is 25. These are some pretty simple chapters that are just going back into research to kind of give you a nudge in the right direction on those. But don't skip these videos that are in the content folder. Those are good ways to make sure that you're getting into the databases, because the assignment for argumentation calls for peer-reviewed sources only. I keep it to a minimal on this. It's 10 sources. It says initial on this. It's going to be those 10 sources all the way through. Just make sure they're peer-reviewed sources from the OCC databases. Do not try and build your argumentation piece this week off of, you know, articles you just find through Google searches. I'm explicitly stating as a reminder, that's in the assignment guidelines. They must be peer-reviewed from OCC databases. All right. So the pieces this week: argumentation, the summary and working thesis. Fill out that in the Dropbox and make sure you do those by Wednesday so that I can have a look at those. And then preliminary points of support will essentially be, if you have a working thesis about your claim at the end of the summary working thesis page, remember that these all have to be in 3rd person objective viewpoint. Don't start saying I on any of this, but put this in the format of summary and working thesis on that page. Then preliminary points of support and works cited. That is essentially an assignment where you're just writing out what your topic sentences in support of your claim would be. And remember that opposition is what you're going to have in the against category, and that's in that outline piece that you do that later on in the week. That's the Friday the 8th piece. I have up here in this layout here, I also said review of the prior 2 weeks chapter readings. If you did not do those completely, a review of them would be a good idea if you're going into this still working your way through some of the concepts of argumentation. particularly in avoiding logical fallacies from the prior chapter that was assigned, so making sure that you understand those. In the content folder for these, there are a couple of little things that are available. Now, here are the different videos that have been assigned for you to watch from the research librarians. And then under the general syllabus and course documents here, I also opened up, there's an MLA formatting one on here. The only thing I would say is there's one error. This was a shared source with OWL Purdue when it was first created. There is an underline on the sample works cited page. You never underline that title. That'd be the only issue on that one. But then, excuse me, under the concepts of argumentation persuasion, it's just the slides from the PowerPoint that additionally break down how we're going about the argumentation process and what refutation and concession mean, because you have to do that on your outline this week for refutation and concession of any opposition. There's a listing of rhetorical and logical strategies in inductive and deductive reasoning and argument, and then there's an overview of some of the logical fallacies you want to avoid, and that section in the chapter covers that as well. So it's a good thing to go over those as a review. This week, these pieces, once everyone has rhetorical analysis feedback on both the summary outline and the draft, you'll be ready to finalize that for the submission on the 10th. But this week right now on the 6th, you have the summary and working thesis. This would be the first one to complete. There's the template here. You download that template and obviously fill this out. It should be all in third person objective format. You're giving a couple of sentences in each one of these categories and then end in a full thesis claim. Remember that these are things in formal objective research, so you're not stating I and you're not using you. You're writing this as though you're writing this into an intro paragraph. You want to be able to transfer a lot of these details right into your intro. Now, in the portion here, excuse me, then on here, the directions and the breakdown of all that are included here. Here are a series of sample topics you can pick from. Pick from anything that's on here. I'm not approving topics at this time outside of these categories. I know these are pretty basic for a lot of people, but I also know that the research is there in the OCC databases to be sourced, so I know that everyone's able to find things to support their ideas. And remember, you have to have research for both yours and your opposition. The other piece on this is the preliminary points of support. You should do the summary and thesis first and then this one second. You download this template here, and all you're doing is, after you've completed a summary and have a working thesis, write out some basic topic sentences that would be your points of support. You'll deal with those in opposition, and then you would take this guy and move it down to the top of the next page and create your works cited page in MLA format. Remember, that means alphabetical order, Times New Roman. Include the DOI for citations that you have for these, and make sure that every line after the first in each entry is a hanging indent so that they're not out of format. Then the other piece on here we have is going to be the essay is actually listed on here as well. And then the other piece is the outline. The other piece on this is the outline. I would do these in successive order. Just go right from the summary to working thesis into preliminary points of support and then into outline. If you do them all at one time, they're usually pretty easy to complete. The argumentation outline gives you the breakdown of all the pieces that are included, including a breakdown in quote format. There's also one in the drafting Dropbox for the essay of it that you guys can look over now to get another example of the quote formatting. Make a claim, give a quote to support it, and then defend or explain that quote. So just note on here on this outline piece, what you're looking at is remove all sample sentences here, create your own general to specific intro. Give me 4 details at least, including one quote with your topic sentence for your argument, and then do the same thing for opposition, and then deal with it with a concession or refutation for each one of those categories. Make sure you remember you're writing in full statements for all of these, fully completed details, and then You got your rhetorical analysis. Look for your feedback on those and finalize those. And then the essay coming up next week. I'll post another overview for this on Monday. Let me know if you got questions. I'm liking the writing so